Do I have a favorite character from the Twilight saga? Jacob is a very fun. There's my favorite characters to watch, but there's also my favorite characters to write. I think Jacob is a fun character to write. The evil vampires were very fun to write. They're all the characters, the human characters, and the sort of quippy, fun dialogue back and forth. That's a lot of fun for me to write. But also, interestingly, the character of Bella's father, Charlie, those scenes with her and Bella, those were some of my favorite scenes, both to watch and to write. Those actors, Billy Burke, who plays Charlie, is just embodies it in such a real way. I really enjoyed seeing those scenes come to life, and they really had both poignance and humor, and it was really, in some ways, one of the big beating hearts of the movie is that relationship. Yeah, adaptations are, at the moment, I've really only had the experience of adapting one thing so far, and it was a great experience, and it came much easier than inventing a world of my own, because Stephanie Meyer, who wrote the book, has already invented such a rich world. But I think there probably are greater challenges in the world of adaptations, but I think that so would I want to adapt more? It's kind of nice, even if you're handed a title of something that's more than you have with an original. You're at least given a general area to write, but. I think there's also, I think I would get perhaps a little antsy to be creating my own world if I were to just be doing adaptations all the time. But if it's a great piece of material, I'd love to adapt it. What a gift it is. There's an enormous pressure because the fans are so passionate about these books. Fortunately, when I was writing the book, I didn't really get how vast this group was. I really didn't get how huge a thing this was. It wasn't until after I finished it, and after when it was starting to go into production, that I really kind of got how intense it was, and I'm really glad I didn't know, because I would have been so intimidated to worried about living up to their expectations, and now I'm just worried about the film living up to the after the fact, the film living up to their expectations, and I hope it does. It was certainly the intention of everyone involved to make the book, to adapt the book. And to be true to it. So it won't be for lack of trying if it doesn't satisfy the fans. I'm sure. Yeah, there were a few things that we added to the screenplay that were not in the book, all sort of suggested by the book. For instance, in the book, in the last quarter of the book or so, the evil vampires come to town and they become the adversaries in the final battle. And but in a film, you can't just have someone show up in the last 25% of the film. You have to really be laying them in. And so we took those characters and I asked myself, well, what were they doing before they showed up? And those were the scenes that I included in the screenplay, going back to at the start. And so they added a sense of sort of impending danger and doom, coming closer and closer, and I think it created a bit of a storyline for Charlie, the father. He is being the sheriff of the town, and so that was something that we brought to the invention of the movie. If there were to be if I were to be adapting the sequel, I think it becomes a little bit more like television writing in some ways, because in Twilight, I didn't know, you don't know who's going to be playing these roles, so there was some adjustments to be done. I wrote Edward and Bella's voices with a lot more sort of quippy humor, and when it got onto those actors, it just became inappropriate. It wasn't their voice, it wasn't, their relationship. And so that a lot of that stuff got pulled out. But, in television, when you're writing many episodes for the same actors, you get to know their rhythms and they get to know yours, and the writing and the acting sync up. And so I think that would be for the sequel would be a easier thing, hopefully, going forward, is knowing who's playing those roles for the most part, and having seen them and having brought life to the characters that were written, initially only existed on the page. They've now embodied them and brought life to them and given them life. And so now if I were to do the sequel, if the sequel happens, going forward, it would actually play to my experiences in television more. The entire screenplay was transformed in some ways by the actors brought themselves to it. The director, Catherine Hardwick, a native Texan, she, they bring their voice to it, and they, embody everything that I've done. They dramatize everything that's on the page, and there's just not a single word or action that was not transformed by not only the actors and the directors, but just everyone involved in the picture, from set deck and costumes to music and editing, and it's completely transformed from the screenplay, and yet it's the screenplay. It's an interesting thing, and as a writer, you really have to adjust to. When you write the movie, you've seen it entirely in your head, and this is something that fans are going to have to adjust to as well, because when they read the when they read the book, they've got the movie in their head, So I think one of the things that we've been coming up against is fans who just can't imagine anyone but who's in their head, and they see this, they think, that's not Bella. Kristen Stewart isn't Bella, and they have to, as I had to, say, all right, that was my vision, but maybe someone else, maybe this is another version, and maybe it's as good. Maybe they'll even bring you something that you hadn't thought of, or that, they'll, push something beyond what you had imagined. And so that was my experience. It's always my experience with everything I ever do. It's, everything I've ever had produced. You write it, you see it in your head, and then you have to see it on screen, and, usually my first reaction is something like, that's not it. But then I begin to let go of what I had in mind and what was sort of stuck there, and I begin to embrace what's on screen, and I realize, how this is different, as good, and possibly better. The most difficult scene to translate was actually a series of scenes. It was all of the getting to know you, middle section of the book, because that happened over the course of 3 or 4 chapters in the book of the question and answer. There's a series of chapters that are sort of question and answer between Bella and Edward, and that can, in a book, you can really sit with that, have 2 people sitting at a table in the cafeteria and discussing this ad nauseum, and it's very compelling in a book. In a movie, that would just be deadly. This just 2 people sitting there talking to each other for 20 minutes. So that was the biggest challenge. It wasn't any one scene, it was actually a series of scenes of that getting to know you, and condensing it and finding ways to pepper that information into other scenes so that it wasn't just one long chunk of what are you, who are you, that sort of thing. So that was probably, I would have to say, our biggest challenge was getting the information out and the exchange, and dramatizing that in some interesting way. One of the things I loved in the book was there was a scene in which Bella, it's blood typing day, I think it is. I'm trying to remember. It's blood typing day in school, and Edward's not there because he is not going to be in a room full of people piercing their skin and bleeding. But Bella, who is phobic about blood, passes out when she smells she has a very keen sense of smell with blood, and she passes out, and so one of the human kids takes her to the nurse, and Edward just shows up and brings her there, and there's a scene that's between them, and so it's just this really great moment in the book. And what we found was that there's only so many times in a movie that you can have Bella be rescued by Edward, and so we picked and chose those moments that we would have that happen. And unfortunately, having that scene in there would have been just one too many times of her being saved. And I promise you that all of that heroism and all that connection is still in there, and the emotion of that scene is still very prevalent throughout the movie. But sadly, it was either that or one of the others. So you really just, it's just killing your favorite moments, and but you keep them alive in other ways. So we really wanted Bella to be. We wanted to bring out the strength in that character, and that strength is all in there in the book. But we just sort of had to. We wanted to emphasize that. We wanted this to be a strong female character, and so getting rescued too many times would not support that vision. Although they're all such delicious scenes in the book, and you wish you could have them all. So my advice to young writers is different than my advice to writers breaking in. My advice to writers is to get some life experience. When in college, study a broad variety of things, and to get out of college and live some. Every job you have, selling shoes, being the barista at Starbucks, every experience that you have, traveling in Tibet, wherever it is, that is all going to become very valuable. I mean, some of the most interesting writers are people who've had entire careers before they started writing. So that's, I think, the tendency is to come out of college and like beeline to the industry and get that job right away. And I certainly understand that drive, but it also is of great use to, join the Coast Guard or, the Peace Corps or something. These are really, they just contribute so much to what you will have to contribute to a film or television project. And in regard to breaking in, I think, know that it's tough to get in, but the thing about writers, the thing that successful writers are those who can basically take a punch. We are, you get kicked in the teeth a lot as a writer, you really do, and you have to be able to be lying there on the ground bleeding and be able to say, all right, pick yourself up and say, okay, well, tomorrow's another day. Maybe tomorrow, Tara and all that. It's very, so it takes that, if you're not that kind of a person, if you're the kind of person who needs job security, if you're the kind of person who needs to, be told what to do, or if you're the kind of person who just can't stand getting beat on a lot emotionally, you really should do something else. Because this is and that really applies to pretty much any job in the industry, but certainly the creative jobs of acting and directing and writing.
Become a docublogger. Log on to docubloggers.org to share your opinions and story ideas, or get out your camera and create your own docublog.